Hello everyone, and welcome back to Level Update. Today, we're taking a close and serious look at the latest Lake Mead water level data and what it really means for the months ahead. As of October 10th, 2025, Lake Mead stands at 1,057.79 feet above sea level, which is 171 feet below its full capacity of 1,229 feet. That number may look stable at first glance, but beneath it lies a steady downward slide that signals growing concern across the Southwest. Over the past several months, Lake Mead experienced some short-term stability. Levels in early autumn climbed slightly, giving the impression that things might be holding steady. But recent data shows that the reservoir is once again losing ground. The most recent daily report shows a drop of 0.13 feet in just 24 hours. That kind of change might appear small, but when you translate it into water volume, it represents roughly 9 billion gallons, gone in a single day. This is why even minor declines are treated as warning signs by water managers. Looking back over the last 30 days, the lake has dropped by about half a foot, continuing a gradual decline that started in late September. The graph shows a sharp peak in early October, reaching just above 1,058 feet, followed by a steady descent. This pattern has repeated several times in recent years, small seasonal rebounds followed by stronger, longer drops. The consistency of that pattern makes it harder to dismiss the current decline as temporary. At the current level of 1,057 feet, Lake Mead holds about 35% of its total capacity. The full pool mark of 1,229 feet hasn't been approached in decades, and experts use several operational thresholds to gauge the situation. The first is 1,075 feet, which marks the point where water shortage declarations typically begin. The next is 1,050 feet, where additional delivery cuts can take effect. The most critical level is around 950 feet, known as minimum power pool, when Hoover Dam can no longer produce hydroelectric power efficiently. That means the current level is only about 100 feet above a point that would directly impact power generation for millions of people. The most concerning aspect of this data is the long-term trajectory. When we compare this year's line on the chart to those of previous years, the decline becomes striking. In 2020, Lake Mead's elevation was near 1,095 feet. In 2021, it slipped to around 1,085 feet. By 2022, the level dropped even further to the 1,045 to 1,050 range, one of the lowest periods in recorded history. In 2024, it climbed modestly but couldn't sustain the recovery. Now in 2025, even with those brief surges, the average level remains far below what it was 5 years ago. The long-term chart paints a clear picture. The long-term trend is downward, and each rebound reaches a lower peak than the one before it. That means the system isn't truly recovering. It's fluctuating within a smaller and smaller range. This slow compression of highs and lows is one of the clearest indicators of long-term depletion. In other words, Lake Mead is losing its ability to bounce back. It's also important to understand that every foot of elevation lost represents a massive volume of water. A 1-foot drop equals roughly 70,000 acre-feet, enough to supply a city the size of Las Vegas for several months. So even a half-foot decline can be the difference between stability and scarcity. With current trends showing daily losses, this is a serious signal that demands close monitoring in the coming weeks. The lake's present behavior shows that inflows from upstream, mainly from Lake Powell, are not enough to offset downstream demand. Even though Lake Powell recently held relatively stable levels, its releases into Mead have been moderated to balance both reservoirs. That leaves Mead's volume vulnerable to steady decreases when downstream withdrawals remain high. The balance between release and use is delicate, and right now it's tilting in the wrong direction. Another indicator worth mentioning is the seasonal curve. Normally, autumn marks a period of gradual decline after the snowmelt-fed inflows from the Rockies taper off. However, this year's descent appears sharper and earlier than in previous years. The late September plateau ended abruptly, and the downward trend accelerated. If this pace continues, Lake Mead could fall below 1,055 feet by mid-November, one of the lowest autumn readings in the past 10 years. When levels fall this far, the impacts ripple outward. Reduced storage affects municipal water supplies, irrigation schedules, and hydroelectric generation at Hoover Dam. Each of these systems depends on consistent lake elevation to function efficiently. Even slight fluctuations can change how much water or power can be delivered day to day. The long-term danger is not only the current number, but the rate of decline and the inability to recover. In simple terms, Lake Mead's water cushion, the difference between current level and critical thresholds, is thinning. The margin for error is shrinking each year. A small shift in inflow or demand can now have a much larger effect than it would have a decade ago. So while 1,057.79 feet is not yet catastrophic, it's a point that should make everyone pay attention. If this downward trend continues through October and into November, it could set the stage for stricter management measures and possible adjustments in water delivery downstream. As we close this update, the message from Lake Mead remains clear. The decline continues, the margin of safety narrows, and the need for careful water management grows more urgent. The surface of the reservoir might look calm, but below that surface, the numbers are telling a story of steady loss. We'll keep tracking every movement here on Level Update, every rise, every fall, and every sign of what's coming next. The current level may not yet mark a crisis, but it's undeniably a warning. Stay tuned as we continue monitoring one of America's most important and most stressed water systems.